video today on this particular project is a very special video for my friend Biddy Davis, who requested this video from me. She was on Facebook one day and she was having trouble working on one of the projects out of my book, Jill Wiseman's Beautiful Beaded Ropes, because I have you guys so spoiled with this whole video thing, right? That you have trouble now following just written instructions sometimes. So I thought that I would go ahead and do a video on this project. It is called Forever Tango, and here is what it looks like in the book. And we do have diagrams and all that kind of thing in the book, like so. And the project itself is fabulous, and I'm wearing it. And the inspiration for this piece actually came about, it was a piece of cheap jewelry that I found at a world market one day, and it wasn't quite this fancy, but it had the idea of having the rings incorporating into a couple of ropes. And of course, because the title of my book is Beaded Ropes, it worked perfectly for what I was wanting to do. This has become one of the more popular pieces out of my book. I see this piece recreated quite often. It is done in all size 15 seed beads, which kind of scares some people off. I think it is beautiful in all size 15s. It's a nice, delicate bracelet. It's something that's very easily wearable. But because it is 15s, I have seen some people work this up in size 11s. And it does really change the scale of the bracelet quite dramatically. So what I decided to do for the video project when I was making all the pieces and parts is I am scaling it up to a size 11 seed bead in this so that you can see the difference side by side. When we're finished making the video, I'll have a finished piece or close to finished piece with the size 11s, and we can set them side by side so you can kind of make your decision. There are a couple of tricky things about using the size 11s though that I encountered as I was making the pieces of this bracelet, and so I'll talk about those in the video too. So let's take a closer look here at the bracelet, and I'll kind of give you an overview of what we're doing here. We're going to make two long strips here with herringbone. So that's going to be just our base strips, these long ones. These are little rings that you're going to make, and so it's exactly the same as these strips. It's just that it's 60 rows long, and then we connect the ends together to turn it into a ring, and you'll have two of those. We'll connect those onto the bracelet. I'll show you how to weave that in. And then here on the ends, I wanted to make it to look very professional at the ends. And so I've created little beaded end caps here using peyote stitch. And so it's just tubular peyote stitch, and then there's a couple of decreases to make this nice flattened end on the top. And then of course our toggle clasp. So we're going to cover all those pieces and parts. We're going to start out though with just the very first and most important piece, which is just these long ropes. And this is what it's going to kind of look like here. This is what it looks like in the 11s, so you can kind of start seeing the scale difference side by side. I just got all these matte seed beads because I think the mattes look the best on camera. It's easiest for you to see the seed beads. But doesn't this look, when it's done in herringbone, doesn't it look like corn on the cob? It looks like corn on the cob in this color to me. Okay, so this is what we're going to start out with. And we're going to do that. The way I like to start my herringbone is using ladder stitch. So I've already ladder stitched together 6 sets of 2 seed beads. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I will pop a link up here for how to do ladder stitch if you have forgotten or if you need to learn how to do ladder stitch. And because I've already got a video covering all that, so that's why I'll pop that link up. What we're going to do once you've got that 6 beads wide by 2 beads high, we're going to fold this up like a taco, and we're going to join the 2 ends together because we want this to be tubular. So my thread, my working thread, is coming out of the top on the right, so I'm going to go through the 2 beads on the left, on the other side of that strip. Then I want to circle around them again. So now I'm going to go up the beads on the right and then down the beads on the left. So that was 3 stitches to connect these. And now what I can do is This is why I like to do it this way. Now my tail thread is coming out on the bottom of this set of beads. My working thread is coming out the top. I can just flip this over and now I'm ready to start beading in the round. And herringbone stitch, we're just doing plain herringbone stitch here. So it's picking up 2 beads, passing down 1, the one next door. Then we have to get back up to the top to add more beads. So we'll pass up 1. Get that thread out of the way. Pick up 2. Pass down the next bead. So that's our second stitch of herringbone. Pick up, go up 1, the next one over. This is going to be our last stitch of the row, so you're going to have 3 stitches on each row. So 1, 2, I'm picking up, passing down through 1, and because this is my last stitch of the row, now all of those towers are even, but this means instead of going up 1, I'm going to have to go up 2, because I'm going up the one from the previous row, plus the one that I added on the first round of this row. So what you can do is look for your thread, and you want that thread to sit straight across that intersection right there. It's going to sit right there. So if you forget, if you went up through here, let me actually just do this wrong for a second. Your thread is going to sit on a diagonal right up that like that. What we want is for the thread to completely be hidden. The other thing about doing that is that it's going to make your work spiral, because that's how you make a spiral herringbone. So instead, you're going to have that step up at the end of every round, and which means you're passing through the top 2 instead of just the top 1. So you're just going to keep working herringbone until you get the length you desire. Now, you could also use cheater herringbone, which is instead of picking up 2 beads at a time, you can pick up 4 beads at a time. And basically you're doing 2 rows at once, like so. Everything else is the same. So this kind of halves your time working with herringbone. So here I am picking up 4, passing down through 1, passing up through 1. Here's my last stitch of this round, so I'm picking up 4, passing down through 1. But remember, this is where my step up is. So this time, instead of having to step up through 2, I'm actually having to step up through 3, because that's where my thread is coming out, is that 3rd bead down, which means I need to come up through those top 3 there for the step up. So that will work up faster. Let me show you here in this piece. You can kind of see where there's almost a pattern of slightly darker spots. Every other round here, there's just this subtle pattern of extra darkness here. What that is that's where the thread is coming across. Normally you would never notice that pattern, because it would be between every single set of seed beads if you were doing herringbone 1 stitch at a time instead of 2 stitches at a time. By doing it 2 stitches at a time, all of a sudden it's every other round, and visually you can see it a little bit. So specifically if you're using matte seed beads. If you're using shiny, you're not going to notice it nearly as much. So just know that will happen and decide whether that's going to drive you crazy or not. For me, it kind of drives me crazy, so I tend to do my herringbone 1 stitch at a time, because I'm kind of a traditionalist anyway. Okay, so you're going to just keep working on your length. Let's talk a bit about length. Your clasp area and your end cap is going to take up about 3/4 of an inch. So, but this is also going to fit slightly different, because this actually has some thickness to it right here at the center where we're going to weave those rings in. So you already want this to be about a 1/2 inch longer than you normally would wear it, meaning that you're adding, so whatever your normal bracelet length is, let's say it's 7 inches, you want to add about 1/2 inch, so you want to make your final bracelet 7.5 inches. Your clasp is going to take up 3/4 of an inch. So now that means you have to reduce by 3/4 of an inch to know how long you want these ropes to be. So by adding a half and then subtracting 3/4, you're ending up just simply subtracting 1/4 of an inch. So basically you're going to make it just shy of your actual bracelet length that you want. And then when we weave these in, that's going to take up some length, but then we're going to add it back in by adding our end caps and clasp. Okay? So go ahead and work on your 2 pieces here of rope. And when we come back, what I'm going to show you is how you're going to bring those ends of those 2 ropes together again at the other end to mimic our ladder start. We're going to mimic it on the other end. And then we're also going to talk about how you're going to make the rings, because there's actually 2 little differences when you're making the rings that we'll do in the center. So now you've got your long ropes, and we just need to finish off those ends before we start moving on to the next piece. So let me show you how we do that. You may have done this before, and so if you have, obviously you can just whiz right through it. But for those who haven't done it before, herringbone connects at the bottom of the stitch here. So you end up with what I call these little towers, and they're not connected right up at the top. So what we need to do is connect that all together. We also want to take like these last 2 sets of seed beads here and straighten them up a little bit so that they look more like the ladder stitch that we started on the first end. So what we're going to do is just circle around these guys. That means I'm not adding any beads. I am just using needle and thread to circle around. So I just came down the next column over. I'm going to come back up the column I was originally coming out of. The purpose for this is these are already attached, but it will help kind of straighten them out a little bit and look more like the ones on the opposite end. Now, because we're actually going to, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking to myself, well, why am I doing this? I'm going to cover it with an end cap. True, but that's not always true. So it's good to know how to do this so that if this shows in the future, you know how to do this. So now here, I'm now moving the next column forward. So I went through this one, and you can see where it's not attached right up here. So we're going to come down to on the right, come back up those 2 on the left. So it's just circling around these, going through the next column. So down, circling back to the ones you originally came out of to help straighten them up, and then down again. There we go. Oh no, you're not invited to this party yet. All right. Here's another set that's not attached. So this time I'm coming out the bottom, which is fine. We're going to then go up the 2 in the next column, and then circle back around through both of them. Get a nice good attachment, straighten them up. Straighten up and fly right. Okay, and here's the next one. They are attached, so we're just straightening them. And then back through here again. And then here's the last one that I need to do. These 2 columns are not attached at the top, so we're just going to circle around those to attach and straighten. And that will be the end. Like that. Down. And then up again. All right, and then that's it. Now you've got a nice firm ending there on the tip. So you'll do that on both of the ropes that you've got that are ready to finish. Let me then switch you over to talking about the rings. And this is something that I discovered when I was working on creating all the samples in 11s is that when you do the same thing in the size 11 seed beads, look how ugly this ring is. It's got all this bunching going on in here. It's just really not super attractive. Now, it's going to lose some of that ugliness when we weave this in and out with your ropes. So this is just going to kind of give you a preview of what this is going to look like, okay? So it does lose some of the problem when you do that, but just look at how elegant this is compared to kind of how bulky and hitchy, I guess is the word that this looks. So on the second ring that I made, and let me just mention that you're making these rings identically to the way you made the ropes. So it's still, you're starting out 6 beads wide by 2 beads high, folding them together, turning them into a ring, and then you're doing a total of 60 rounds of herringbone. So what I usually do is I will just put those 60 beads, the 60 beads out, and then the first bead that I pick up for each round comes out of that pile of 60. It's sometimes a little bit easier than trying to count 60 rows in your finished piece. So I really didn't love how this ring looked. So on my next ring that I made, look at this, look what a difference this makes. So if I can convince you at all, what I did here is 2 of the stitches of herringbone, I used size 11s the way I did here. But on that third stitch, I actually did use 15s. So the 15s create a natural curve here with the 11s on the outside. And so look how much prettier that ring is going to be when we finish it off. It makes a huge difference, and then you only have that 1 stitch on each round that you're using the 15s. Plus it gives you an interesting color accent that you can add in there, okay? So I highly suggest doing that. Now here on this particular ring, this is my 60 rounds, and I wanted to show you how we're going to join these 2 ends together. And what I've got here is my thread coming out of one of the first column of 15 over here. And so what I'm going to do is we're just going to circle stitch, kind of the way we did on these ends, back and forth to join all these together. So I'm coming out that first one of the 15s here, which means I'm going to go in the first one of the 15s over here. And I usually go 2 or 3 seed beads in when I make these joins. So it's going to look a little rough when you first start this, so don't freak out if the join doesn't look like it's coming together perfectly. By the time you get done with it, it will. So then I'm going to come over to the next column, which in this case is 11s, and because I want my thread to hide right there, I'm 3 beads in on this side. That means I'm going to go up through 3 beads on this side of the column. Let's see here. There we go. Using a size 10 needle, so it's getting a little tight in here. And I'm going to go through a couple beads in the corresponding column on the opposite side, so 2 or 3. Needle says 3. Okay. And you want to kind of stop periodically, make sure it's all lining up the way it should. I have a hooked thread here. There we go. That's why it was looking funny. There we go. So same thing here, want my thread to just lay in that intersection, so I'm going to go through 3 in the next column over, pass through a couple beads in the corresponding column on the opposite side. This time I'll just grab 2. I like to stagger it so it's not always 3, because otherwise it creates too much of a thread intersection right there. Okay, so then I'll go through these top 2 on the next column over. So take your time as you're doing this. Make sure you're not looping your thread. Make sure, stop and look periodically. Make sure your columns are lining up the way they should. Okay, so here's the corresponding column on the other side. Another thing that using the 15, if you're going to do the 11s, for the rings really makes a difference is it just makes it easier to see where your lineup starts. Okay, we'll do coming across the next column. See, I kind of keep flipping it to get a better angle on it so I can get my needle through these beads. We're almost all the way around. Okay, there's that. And then corresponding column is going to be right here. And we kind of need to pull it back so that it'll all fit properly. Let's just go up through 2 this time. Get Mr. Tail out of the way here. There we go. And then we've got one last line to do over here, and that is that last column of 15s. So go through 2 here, go through a couple here, tighten it all up. And then, if you need to, you can go back and reinforce those joins another time. Sometimes it's helpful to do it loose the first time and then go back through and tighten it up the second time, because that way you can make sure that you've gotten your connections made that you want. But look at what a difference that makes in your circles. So it's huge. So let me show you then exactly how these circles are going to go on here. You would end off these threads. I'm just going to pretend that the threads aren't there. We're just going to kind of force it forward here. Normally you would not already have a end cap on one end of this. You would do that after you've added your circles. I just was working ahead a little bit while I was getting ready for the filming today. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to kind of cut this little guy off just to get it out of the way. What you're going to do is, when you're adding these circles, it's really simple. You're going to do it the same way for both circles. And one of the things that I like to do is, your first move is going to be to take these over and then under. Okay, so that's the first round. And then I kind of move this to where I think I want it. And then we're going to do over and under again. And this is what I do where I take it to a single. So I'm going to bring it over again and then under, okay, on that side. And then same thing here, over and under. And there it is. There's our beautiful rope, okay? And this moves. You can move this. So like I can cinch it down farther to make room for the other circle. Okay. And then here's our other circle. So it's going over and under with both. Get these threads out of the way. And then one at a time, coming over and under again. And then same thing on this side, over and under again. And you can pull those down. And actually, so this is interesting. I wonder if this is like this in the book. See how this ended up with them being reversed? So what you really want to do with your second one, that's a good question. I'll have to go look and see if I goofed that up in the book. Nobody's mentioned it to me before. So on the second one, instead of starting with over, you actually want to start with under and over. So you'll reverse it so that they will be mirror images of each other. And then same thing, you'll have to reverse this part too, so it will be under and then bring it over. And this is under and bring it over. Okay, and then you can tighten all this down. There we go. Now they match up pretty. Yay! So you can see that this shrunk up a little bit by adding the circles in here. What I would do, this is a little bit off center, so once we add the end cap here, there's going to be a little bit more space on this side. So what I would do is, before I started moving forward, I would kind of smush this down a little bit farther over here and then smush this up here. So it's just a little bit of finagling that you have to do to kind of get it nice and centered. There, see, that's already better. Now it'll be centered perfectly. And then here's the side-by-side comparison of, oops, there we go, side-by-side of what the 11s look like versus the 15s, and what this will look like on the wrist. Okay, so that's kind of fun, huh? I love doing the little, putting the rings on and doing the twist. When we come back, I will tell you how we're going to make those end caps. I really love these little beaded end caps that I developed. I think for the first time was for, I've got a big knot necklace in the book called Josephine's Fortune, and that was the first time I developed the end caps. And I've used them in a number of projects since then. I've used them here in Forever Tango. I used it as the top of my tassel necklace. And you'll see it in some other projects coming up too, because I think it just gives a really nice finished look to your piece of jewelry. So it's really simple to do too. So let's take a look at the beads and we'll get you going. You're going to start out by picking up 24 size 11 seed beads. And I went ahead and added a stoppered bead because 24 is an awful lot even for me to control without a stopper bead. We're going to go from the tail end back through all those beads again. Needless to say, you're going to have to make several stitches to get through all of them, unless you're Houdini, and I am not. All right, keep going, keep going. And then I will want to move one bead past my tail thread so that my working thread is coming out on one side of it and my tail thread is coming out on the other. Right, like that. I'll loosen. There we go. So now you can see tail thread coming out of this side, working thread coming out of there. We're going to do peyote around this. So it's just simple plain peyote. Your first round, even though we're going to make this tubular, it's going to sit off to the side, and that's totally normal, and I don't even worry about it. Don't even give it another thought. This number of beads will make a specific size of end cap that happens to work with putting the two ropes inside. You can adjust the number of beads that you use in this initial ring to create a different diameter, but to have it fold over on the top and come together the way it does in my particular set of instructions, you're going to need to do an increase or decrease in a set of 4 so that it will work out correctly on the top to do your decreases, just so you know. Okay. Okay, my eyes are getting tired, obviously. There we go. Something that frequently will help people when they're stitching and doing something tubular like this is having some kind of dowel in the center of this. This is my last stitch of this round. I'm going to put the bead here. I'm going to pass through the next bead, and then I will also then do my step up and go through the first bead that I added on this next round. So remember that when you finish each round, you're going to have the step up so that you're getting into one of the sticky outy beads. Okay, so right here, this next round is going to be kind of the most tricky one, because when we start adding the next round, this is where we're going to start having it fold upward and start having it be vertical. And this is where having a dowel can be helpful. I forgot to bring the dowels that I use. Actually, you know what works really great for that is knitting needles. So if you have an assortment of knitting needle sizes, you can usually find one that works great with your center. In this case, this is a fairly large hole, and so you may have to use like a piece of you can get some like those balsa wood things or whatever. A pen might work on this, but you know what I actually did the other night when I was at home and trying to do this? I had these two ends of my rope together, and I knew that that was going to fit inside, so I just snugged this over the ropes and used the ropes themselves as a dowel. This worked actually really quite well. So here I am. I'm going to start doing my next round, and this is where I'm going to start. When I'm tightening, I'm going to tighten upward and inward because I'm working on making this vertical now. So I'm just going to pick up a bead, pass through the next sticky outie, and when I tighten, I'm tightening up and in. Okay. And really we don't need this stopper bead anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that. I've got this random thread in there somewhere. Okay. And pick up one, pass through the next sticky outie, encourage it to move upward. Now you can already see how just in 2 stitches I now have a vertical line going on here instead of it being horizontal. Pick up one, pass through the next sticky outie, encourage it to stand up, and we're just going to do that all the way around. My original sample was done in all the same color bead, and when I was doing these size 11s, I always kind of try to, if I get an opportunity to make a sample a second time, I usually try to change a couple of things just to see what would happen. You know, it's one of those, what would happen if? And so this time, you'll notice that I did the rings, and I'm doing the end caps, and I'm going to do the clasp in a contrasting color, just because I thought it would be interesting to see what that looked like. In addition to, of course, doing it in the size 11s instead of the size 15s. Okay, I'm almost all the way around here. All right, so this is going to be my last stitch of this. Oh, it's not my last stitch of this round. Oop, second to last stitch. Burp. There we go. So here's where my last stitch is. So I've got kind of a high cliff here, meaning that this is going to be the bead my new one's sitting on top of, and then I'm going to pass through the next 2 beads so that I'm coming out of the sticky outie on top. Voila. And so now, and I would keep beading around and adding rows with that around the, what we're using is the ropes as a dowel. But I wanted to pull this off to show you how you're going to count rows, because what you're going to want to do is a total of 7 rows of this. When we picked up those first 24 beads, that was the first 2 rows. And then since then, we've done 2 more rows. So what we've got here is 4 rows. And the easiest way to count this is to count 2 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That shows us that we're on, this is 4 rows. So we've got 3 more to add before then we start doing the decreases. So let me kind of switch over to the next piece here where I beaded ahead a little bit. So this is what it looks like when you have finished all 7 rows. And again, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's how I know we've got the 7 rows. So let me switch my needle over to this piece here, and I'll show you how we're going to do these decreases. Now you can do these decreases in either a single color or 2 colors. I happen to think that doing it in 2 colors, especially when you're doing it maybe for the first time, is going to make your life a lot easier so you can see where you're going. I'm at the point now where I have no trouble doing it with a single color, but I'm going to do this with 2 colors so that I can more easily show you the pattern that's going to happen here. So this is going to be our first round of decrease, and I am going to do it where I'm taking 2, oops, the thread's shorter than I thought it was. I kept trying to pull. Okay, 2 regular peyote stitches, so 1 bead, 2 beads, and then I am just going to take my thread and pass across that intersection and go through the next sticky outie bead without adding any bead in there. Don't freak out that there's thread showing there, because when this all decreases and folds in, you're never going to see it. If it really bothers you so much that you can't bring yourself to just jump across, you can go down and then back up to get to that sticky outie, but it's just not necessary. So so I just tend to just jump across, and then we're doing 1 and 2, and then jump across, and then 1 and 2. And then you can even do your jump across as you anchor in this second bead here. So that was my jump across. And I've got, this will be my last set. 1 and 2. And then jump across. And when I jump across, this is actually also where my step up is. So I'm jumping across to the bead that's on the same level, and then my step up will be through this first bead, the new one that I added. So you can kind of see where it's already starting to pull inwards a little bit. Okay. On this next round, we're just going to do regular peyote stitches. So I'm going to go back to the other color. So we've got one here. That's normal peyote stitch. And then here, you've got this big wide canyon. So this is where we did that skip. We're just going to pretend like that skip is just, or that big wide canyon is like a normal stitch. So we're just picking up one and going straight across that big wide canyon to the next sticky outy bead. This one looks like a normal peyote stitch. This is a canyon one. So you were jumping over all of these beads to the next sticky outy. A normal. And then jumping across the canyon. And as I'm tightening all this, it's folding over slowly towards the center here, like so. And then jumping across the canyon and doing our step up to that very first bead that we added right here, like so. Okay. So now what we need to do is we're going to do another round of, it's a good question. What are we doing the next round of? I'll need to look it up in the book here. See, this is why it's good to have instructions in your book so that you can find all this. So end caps, let's see here. We are decreasing, okay, peyote. And then, okay, so we're doing another decrease one. So this is where we are going to make a single stitch, like normal, and then we're jumping across. So remember how the first time we did 2 stitches and then jumped across? This time we're doing a single and jumping across. So single stitch, jumping across to the next sticky outy without adding any bead in that little spot. So going through the next sticky outy, then also through the next sticky outy where we're doing that jump across, and single normal stitch, and then through the next sticky outy, that jump across, and then this is where the first stitch of that row was, right there. Okay, see how now we're down to 1, 2, 3, 4 sticky outies? We're just going to do a single round of peyote between those. So picking up one and passing through the next sticky outy, picking up one, passing through the next sticky outy, picking up one, and then one last bead, like so. And there we go. It's all closed up on top. We've got this beautiful end cap. So you can see where that might get a little bit crazy if you're just doing it in a single color, because you do have to kind of be able to evaluate where you're going with the beads to see the pattern. You have to kind of be able to see it. So I do suggest that you try it for the first time or two with 2 colors, and then go ahead and challenge yourself and do it with a single color. See how good you got. So go ahead and make your 2 end caps. When we come back, I'm going to show you how to put the end caps on and attach them, and how we're going to attach the clasp. So now you've got your 2 little adorable end caps, and let's see how we're going to actually attach them to the body of the bracelet itself. First, I want to tell you that I'm going to actually have a one-page update on jillwisemandesigns.com for this project that's in the book. Remember how when I put the rings on in the previous segment and one of them was flipped wrong and I said, hey, I wonder if I did that wrong in the book? Well, I just looked it up and I did do it wrong in the book. 3 years and nobody's told me that I had that thing wrong in the book. So I will update that on the page so that you'll have, you know, an updated correction for that. I'm also going to change how I show you how to attach the end cap. The way I did it in the book is not wrong. This is just a little bit easier, and I'm all about easier. So I'm going to have that updated information. And then the last thing that I'm going to have as a correction for the book is I give you a specific number of beads that I used for the loop on the toggle. And the number happens to be 34 in the book. And over time, as I've worn this piece, because I wear it quite often, I've had it drop off by my wrist a couple of times. That loop is actually just a little bit too loose. So I'm going to adjust that down to 30 beads in the loop. And so we're just going to make that correction. And so those 3 things I'll just have on a one-page PDF download that you'll be able to get at jillwisemandesigns.com. And you can just tuck it in your book so that you've got the most up-to-date information. Okay, so now let's actually look at what I'm talking about. And here's our little acorn hat. Isn't it so cute? And I've already attached this one on this end, and I did this the way that I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm just going to kind of walk you through the way it shows you in the book, and I'll explain why this way that I'm going to change it to is a little bit easier. What I had you do when the instructions in the book say to go along these outside 2 beads, the sticky outie and the indented one, and you'd move forward by a couple of beads, and then you'd move into the herringbone rope and move a couple of beads and then come back up. And so you're basically stitching back and forth from this bottom edge. The reason I'm going to move away from that and show you a different way is because if you look at this, your peyote stitches are going one direction, the holes in the beads are going one direction. Your herringbone stitches those holes in the beads are going at a 90-degree angle from the first ones. So it's just a little bit tricky to move back and forth between beads that are sitting at a 90-degree angle from each other. So I've got an easier method to make that happen, and that's what we're going to do here on this end. So you want to kind of finagle your little circles here so that you can get the 2 ends of your rope together, and then you're going to tuck them into the end cap, and you want to tuck them in as far as they'll go. So you want those ends to be right up on the top of this end cap here, and then you're just going to kind of pinch it all together. My thread is coming out of the end cap, and if you'll remember, we finished up right here on the tip, on the top here. I wove my thread down so that it's coming out kind of in the middle of the side here. Doesn't really matter where, anywhere around there, because what we're going to do is, this is what I call the brute force method. We're literally going to just take this needle and thread and poke it straight through the center of the bead cap. We're going to be catching the rope by doing that inside, so we're poking through both ropes, and we're just going to come out on the opposite side of the bead cap. We're going to move a bead, maybe 2, and we're going to do the exact same thing, and we're going to poke just straight through the end cap here. You want to kind of poke it at an angle so that you can make sure you want to kind of visually say, okay, yep, this is going to be going through the the ropes that are inside there also, like so. And then you move another couple of beads, and periodically you kind of wiggle it and see how loose it is. This is still pretty loose. So what I ended up doing on the first end is I'm going to say that I poked it through the entire section, this entire center section, about 5 or 6 times before I felt like it was really nicely secure where I wasn't getting a ton of movement back and forth. The other thing that I did is I made sure that I made some of those stitches down low and some of those stitches up high so that it would help distribute the force of any, you know, because the clasp is going to be attached to the end of this end cap. So you want to make sure that this is a nice tight connection, because you don't want you to catch your clasp on something and have the end cap pull off. So by having it attached up high and down low, that just distributes those forces against it and just makes it much more secure. I'm obviously running out of thread here, so I'm not going to do it all the way back and forth 5 or 6 times, but that's what you're going to do, is go back and forth. If you need to, you would add a new thread to attach your clasp. If you already have thread attached, you could go ahead and weave it back up to the top here and attach your clasp that way. You're going to be using a peyote tube toggle for this. I will pop a link up that will show you the video on how to make the peyote tube toggle if you don't know how to do that already. Normally I do one that's 10 beads wide by 10 rows long. This one, I believe I actually did 12 wide. Let me actually double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, so this is 12 wide, so it's a little bit wider. When you go to attach it, you're going to just pick any one of those last 4 beads that you added up here. So in our case, it was the darker color that were our last 4, and so it's this, 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 and this. And you're going to attach your clasp by using 2 that are across from each other. So we would pick that one and that one. And those would be the ones that we would attach the clasp to. So let me show you here on this sample. All I did when I came out of that bead out of the top is I picked up 3 of the, in this case it was size 15 seed beads, but if you're doing the size 11 version, you would pick up 3 11s. I passed through 2 beads on the diagonal in the peyote toggle. You can kind of work through a couple of them to see which ones you can get through most easily, because you're going to have to reinforce the clasp area, so you don't want to find 2 beads that are so tight that you're never going to get your needle back in there again. So I will usually kind of go, okay, I was able to get that one in that direction pretty easily. When I was trying the other way, this direction, I was having more trouble there. So this is the better option for me to attach it. And then coming out of those 2 beads on the diagonal, I just picked up another 3 seed beads and passed back through the seed bead, that last round seed bead on the opposite side from where I came out. Then you can just use the beads in the end cap to travel over to the first side again, and you'll reinforce that entire path. And you want to reinforce the path twice so that you have 3 passes of thread going through there. On your loop end, it's pretty much the same thing. Where here I picked up, let me just detach that. I picked up 3 seed beads. I picked up a 4th to be the center. See how this comes to a center here? I don't like to do just a simple loop, because when you do a loop that comes in like this, so it creates more of an oval shape. That holds onto your clasp better. If you have something that is completely rounded, and if it came in on either side like this, so it was more of a U shape, it doesn't hold onto your toggle nearly as well. So that's why I always kind of bring it into this center point. So I actually picked up 4 beads then, plus the beads of your loop. So remember how I said I made this one with 34, but I'm going to suggest you make yours with 30. Then I passed back through that 4th bead from the beginning, picked up another 3 seed beads, and then attached back in to that last bead on the opposite side of where I came out. So it would be this one and this one, like so. And then for reinforcement, especially if you're using the 15s, doing a peyote around this is beautiful. So each time I came up to do the reinforcement round, I did a round of peyote. So in the past, I think I've only shown you where I did a single round of peyote for the second pass through here. On this one, I actually, when I came to do the 3rd pass, I did a 3rd round of peyote. And what I ended up doing when I did that 3rd round of peyote is I actually put 2 beads in each one of these spots instead of a single. And that kind of makes it a little more ruffly, but it also kind of brings it and folds it in a little bit more so that it'll hug the clasp here. So it's still just doing regular peyote stitch, it's just that you're putting 2 beads in each spot instead of a single bead. Okay? So that is it. And then you just end off your threads and you wear your fabulous bracelet and you knock everybody's socks off, because when everybody gives you compliments on it, you're going to be able to say, I made that. Because you know what? I made that. I really love this project, and I hope you do too. It is a really good everyday bracelet. It's something that is not so over the top that you can't wear it just with jeans and things like that. You can fancy it up. I've seen people put some kind of a pretty bead in the center there if you want, if you've got something with a hole big enough that it'll go over the 2 ropes. So you can do some extra embellishment on it, but I just kind of consider this a really good everyday bracelet. So I hope you enjoy it. And now I will tell you that while I'm going to have that 1-page PDF download on my Jill Wiseman Designs website, it will not be the full set of instructions, okay? So the full set of instructions is in my book, which is Jill Wiseman's Beautiful Beaded Ropes. So that's where the full set of instructions are. You can get this book on my website. When you buy it off my website, I autograph it. And not only do I autograph it, but my fabulous puppy dog Winston, who got his picture in here, he thinks he wrote the whole book because his picture's on the author page. So he photographs the books that come from me too. And then there's also a free pattern that you only get when you buy it from, buy the book from me. That will also come in your package when you buy it from me. Now, you also can get this at other booksellers. You can get it probably at your local bead store. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. So you don't have an excuse to not be able to get your hands on it. There's a bunch of places, and there's 24 projects, so this is just one of them. I know, and I'm going to work my way through all the projects in the book so that there will be videos on all of them eventually. Happy beading!